This is Let's Talk Business with your hosts, Marc Ebinger and Heather Boehme. Now, here's Marc.
Welcome to Let's Talk Business, a show that highlights some of the best businesses in the San Antonio area. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk with Keaton Frieberg, a law partner with Texas Suits, who specializes in real estate and business transactions and litigation. Keaton, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
It's always good to have a lawyer on your team here.
Yeah,
you know
I feel like law is so murky that everybody's always really interested when a lawyer comes on.
Yeah. Interesting, not boring.
Always.
That's what's unique about Keaton.
We're also going to talk with Eddie Solis, a realtor with Empire Realty Group, who specializes in working with military members. Eddie, welcome to the show.
What's good, everybody? Thanks for having me.
You bet, buddy. In studio with us today, of course, is Heather Boehme, a certified business coach that works with business owners to gain clarity in business and achieve their goals. Heather, welcome back to the show.
Always glad to be here.
Awesome. A quick reminder for our listeners, you can catch video and podcast versions of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. And if you are a business owner in the San Antonio area and would like to have your company featured on the show, visit our website at satalkradio.com or call our office at 210-960-8210. That's 210-960-8210. Now, so I posted some videos. Heather and I did a show last week, and we just kind of like a warm-up, kind of recap how, getting kicked off the radio and dealing with all stress of that whole thing. And then, so I took clips of that and put them up on YouTube, and right out of the gate, it was fun watching the views go up. It was just boom,
yeah, a
boom,
couple
boom.
of them popped off. They just immediately started getting up to like 1,000 views within not very long. You posted them, it was like an hour, and bam.
Yeah, it was very, very quick. And then now they're sitting at right around between 2,500 and 3,000 on most of those videos. They were just the short clips, of course, that I put up there. The longer clips, I think we have over 1,000 views. It's pretty standard for our audience. So we reached over the last 28 days, and now it's not really even a fair metric because we're increasing the intensity of it, but we reached over 73,000 views in the last 28 days. And we're on track to hit 100,000.
Right. Congratulations.
Every 20. Yeah, that's my goal. And then I'm going to double that. So it's just, I'm going to I like to double things.
I love it.
Scaling up rapidly.
Yeah, right. So anyway, that's what's going on with us. What's going on with you, Heather?
Well, just staying busy, meeting with a ton of new businesses here in San Antonio and just getting to know everybody so that they can scale up too. It seems like a growth season. And most of the business I've been talking to have been really talking about how can they scale up and move up, similar to how we're looking to get more viewers. They're looking to grow their businesses.
Yeah, and Keaton, so do you see this as a growth time of year as well? We're in April. Do you guys stay pretty active over the? I know you're hiring people and stuff over there now too.
Yeah. I think it's always growth. It's always growth time, But specifically right now, yeah, we're definitely growing. Hiring, trying to find people that fit in with our culture is what is kind of a priority right now.
Yeah, and Eddie, how's real estate going as far as growth?
It's going great. The first quarter is usually slow for some agents, but our team has found effective ways to be successful. And right now, the busy season is about to kick off for us. As y'all may know, the summertime, that's when everybody wants to move. Yeah. So we're looking forward to it.
And PCS season for the military, I know you do a lot with that. When is that?
That's happening now. People are already getting their orders, so summertime's already starting to look very eye candy for a lot of people, and they're keying in on where they want to go, where they want to move. And so trying to get my team ready to get them in that mindset, hey, it's time to get that ball rolling, because that wintertime, that's when it starts slowing down.
Yeah, and San Antonio all up through Austin, it's just growing like crazy. New Braunfels is doing well there too, from what I understand. So a lot of folks moving from California and New York. I heard talk about building a wall or something around Texas. I don't know what's going on with that, but I just hear rumors. I don't know if they're true. I just make stuff up when we come in here. So, all right, cool. Well, all right, that's a show. No, I'm kidding. All right, so first up on the show is Keaton Frieberg, a law partner with Texas Suits, who specializes in real estate and business transactions and litigation. Keaton, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
So you're interested in real estate investing. Why is that?
My family's been involved in real estate investing. My dad's really big into it. I've kind of seen his growth in a very short time frame. I mean, he started only maybe 4 years ago. I was like, Dad, you should do this. And he's like, I don't know. And then finally he jumped in and he did it. And he's picked up, I don't know, I think he's at 10, 12 properties now within a couple of years.
What kind of properties is he picking up?
Mostly single family, or he picked up a few duplexes here recently. So he's slowly starting to get a little bit scale up the size of the real estate a little bit.
And the single family stuff, is that for long-term rentals?
Yes, all of it. He has started to do some Airbnbs. And so that has been pretty fruitful. I think he's going to probably switch a lot of his model over to Airbnb just because it's been so working out so well.
Isn't the hard part of Airbnb's giving up so much of that revenue? Don't they take like a pretty good sized cut, Airbnb, or no?
They do. I don't know that when he works out his math, it's way more than it would be. He makes way more than he would on long-term rentals. So it's a little riskier, definitely, but he has enough long-term rentals to where I think his risk is covered. So everything for the short term is just all profit.
Okay. And I know Heather's got questions for you too, but before you get into that, do you have a disclaimer or something you're supposed to put out?
I gotta
just
get the
go ahead and do it. Just do it.
Out of the way.
Just do it.
All right. So the information on today's recording is not legal advice. The information provided is not a substitute for and does not replace the advice or representation of counsel. So if you have a specific situation come up, go reach out to an attorney.
And that's really should go for the internet as a whole, right? No, wait a minute. I Googled it. I'm pretty sure I have this type of disease or whatever.
Yeah, please don't take a podcast as your like tried and true information without actually.
But they said
that's a good point.
I heard it on TikTok.
But judge.
But if you come and sit down with me, then you can rely on the information.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
I'll be right there in the courthouse.
Right. Well, I think he's my lawyer. So is that a conflict? Wait a second.
Does this count? Well, if we're talking about real estate investing, one of the things that I always find interesting is people always say, oh yeah, I got into it a couple years ago. It sounds like the hardest part is that first transaction. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Definitely. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, well, from what I see, it's really capital. So coming in with capital and then just navigating the first transaction is really huge. I mean, you walk a lot of people through their first transaction, and I think for a lot of people, it's a big mystery. And so yeah, the first one, I think once you get it out of the way, you kind of understand the process and a little bit of what you need and what goes into it. I think from there, starts to compound on itself.
Okay. So speaking of capital, what are some creative financing tools that you would suggest people look into if they're just like starting out in real estate investing?
Yeah. So there's many that for investors to choose from, but some that are more common right now are subject to transactions, wraparounds, which is a subject to inside of a wraparound transaction, but or maybe seller financing. Then all of those are creative financing tools that don't necessarily always include or require a ton of capital down.
Okay, so let's
break that down.
Yeah, layman's terms. Sure. What's your favorite one?
So, well, I think the easiest way is to start with a subject to, because it's kind of the foundation to the wrap transaction. So, a subject to, in its simplest form, is just taking a piece of real estate subject to the pre-existing mortgage or the underlying mortgage that's already in place. So, I think these are always done or illustrated well in some sort of an example. So if Marc has a piece of real estate and I want it, and I don't necessarily, maybe I don't have the credit, or maybe I don't have the down payment to go the traditional financing route, I'll reach out to Marc and say, hey Marc, maybe for a number of reasons, maybe you're not in a good financial position either, and I'm like, hey, can I purchase your piece of property? And he says, sure. Well, because I'm not going to go through the creative financing route, all I have to do is I have to get Marc to sign over title to the property, just like you would if you're buying a car or something like that. You're just signing over title to the property, which is in the form of a deed. And but there's always the fact that Marc still has an existing mortgage on the property. So what do you do with that? Well, you have, through a series of documents, I am going to take Marc's mortgage over, and it'll come with that transfer of title. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's basically like I'll take your mortgage and pay out the difference. What happens to that difference in equity?
Right. Well, and that's where the creative part comes in. Maybe I give Marc, $20,000, $30,000, who knows, for this particular situation, depending on how much equity is in there. So I give Marc the difference, or whatever amount we mutually agree upon, and from there, he hands over title, and I start making those mortgage payments directly to the lender.
Do you see a big cash exchange typical when this type of deals get made?
You know, it really depends on when these deals are done and how. So there's kind of a few reasons why subject to might occur. One is maybe someone's behind on their payments. Maybe they're facing foreclosure. So when you have a seller whose back is against the wall, at that point, you know, there should still be consideration, some sort of large cash exchange. But it kind of depends on the timing, because if they're going to go through foreclosure, they're about to lose everything. And so if an investor, somebody comes in right then and there and is able to pick up the property, it kind of creates a win-win situation, because they were about to lose everything, but now they're going to get some sort of capital, and then the investor also picks up the property. So it can sometimes. And then the other times is that right now the reason that it's such a big deal is because interest rates are so high that when you're taking that over that pre-existing note, you're taking it subject to a much lower interest rate. And so it's a really big deal for some people.
See, that's what when I was doing my research on this, that was the thing that hit me, was that you're going to want to keep those lower interest rate mortgages because you can come out ahead. Let me get your opinion on it, because this is a tougher question,
Sure.
But is it predatory in nature?
So I think that depending on the way that the transaction is conducted, it can be. I have seen files come across my desk, or cases come across my desk, where there has been zero consideration provided. And at that point, I really do believe that's absolutely predatory in nature. I think you got to kind of look at the totality of the circumstances, see, how much is left on the note. What is this property really worth? I think it's more of a fact-intensive question to figure out whether or not
Sure.
it's predatory in nature.
But I would say too that it's very emotional. It's not just facts. It's also going to be emotional, because the person about to lose their property and take the big hit on their credit, they're freaking out.
Absolutely.
And then the investor is salivating at the mouth, because they're like, okay, I got something here. This is a great deal. I can't wait to tell everybody what a great deal I made, kind of a thing. So there's a give and take, but I think ultimately it does present a win-win situation. I'd say by and large. What are your thoughts on that, Eddie?
Some case by case scenario. I can see where you're standing from, to where that client needs to get it off their hands. I get that. But me, when I call myself the people's realtor, when I look out for the people, to me, I don't like the way it sounds, because I want them to at least walk away with something, and they still get that loan against them, right? Like they still have the loan on their. Mm-hmm. So they can't go out and buy another home most cases. So it's kind of like last case scenario, here you go kind of thing. Once, like you said, investor, awesome, I just won. But for the people, like, man, like you just lost your home. It's something you couldn't afford. So I get that part, right? So you're helping them out in that scenario. But we're always trying to get them from where they're at to the next point. And sometimes I don't want to say get sucked in, but when the investors touch them first without going to a real estate agent and getting some, at least, hey, you know what, you should do this first before going that route. In some cases they go, they're in foreclosure. I had those calls like, hey, I got to sell my house in 2 weeks. Like they're going to come take off, and that may be a scenario where maybe it may do them best. But I've had those where I'm sitting down at the table, coffee table, talking like, hey, let's talk numbers. And they come and hit me with, I'm going to lose everything.
Right. But to that point, though, they got themselves into that place.
That's true.
So it's like, look, I understand charity, but this isn't a charity situation. It's a business situation. And if they can come away with their credit intact and a win, it may not
Cash
be a great
in their
win.
pocket.
Cash in their pocket, you know what I mean? Then it's like, everybody kind of wins on that. So I really like the concept of the deal, but just like everything, there's going to be the emotional component of it, that once it's the fleeting side of it, it's like, oh, and then it's like, well, how much did I lose? 2 years, 3 years down the road, they might be upset about something. Do you see, Keaton, like down the road where these things can go sour? On this type of transaction thing?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Okay, I want to touch back on a little bit of what Eddie said real quick. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. The only when I think that the win-win is really created is especially with that foreclosure just knocking on the door. I mean, there's been times where, and actually involved in a lot of these subject to transactions is actually a temporary restraining order, where you have to go to the judge and say, Judge, look, this one's under, we have a contract. We just need a little bit longer so that we can stop the bank from foreclosing on the property. It doesn't always work. It's case by case scenario, but that's how close. That's how imminent this issue is sometimes. And so
procrastination is part of the game.
I think it comes down to transparency too, especially, as we're seeing a shifting market, we're seeing increased interest rates come up. We're seeing prices drop. I mean, I've just been keeping an eye on Realtor.com, I see price cuts. And there's a certain percentage of the population that in a couple years finds themselves in need of a move. They have to move. And if you stare down the barrel of decreased pricing, the last few years of inflated pricing and fees, they may be looking at an L if they did not put a ton of equity into their home when they originally bought it. So there's a bunch of different scenarios where this can come up. But if everybody just clearly understands, I think that's the line between predatory and non-predatory is, do they understand what they're getting themselves into? Is it benefiting the seller in some way? And obviously it's benefiting the investor, but if you're transparent about it, that's the key feature.
Well, the investors come to the table, they're prepared. They've planned, they're ready. And unfortunately, in a lot of these situations, the homeowners, they haven't planned and they didn't do well, or they overestimated, underestimated, whatever the problem is, but something bad happened to them. And that's just the nature of the world.
Yeah, the emotion of money, unfortunately, comes up again and again and again when we see problems there. Yeah. It's just some people, they want to, they want to ignore the problem, or it just gets too much. So these situations arise.
So let's talk about the risks.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Talk about some of the benefits already. We didn't go through line by line, but so some risks for the buyer.
So for the buyer is getting, not knowing their numbers, not having a professional know, what their property is worth, given the fact scenario as a whole. Not knowing, how much equity do I really have here? What's fair for me in this situation? Really, I think that's the big risk. Another risk,
foreclosure.
Yeah. Another risk is if for some reason, which as long as you have your documents right, which this is a very document intensive process that goes in here. There's a ton of documents. Mm-hmm. I think there's total, some of the ones that I use, we're looking at probably over 50 to 70 pages worth of forms here. But you are kind of, in some sense, you do have recourse, but you are kind of trusting that buyer that they're going to make that payment. And so, for the rest of the loan, which is, it's definitely, you can't say that's not a risk. So
right, because their credit's at risk is what you're saying.
Yeah. What's the legal recourse someone could go? So say this happened, they sold it wraparound, they got all the documents squared away, and the investor doesn't pay. What happens then?
The investor doesn't pay for the initial one, or they're not paying on
they're not paying on the mortgage.
This would be a breach of contract sort of situation. That would be their recourse. They're not doing what they said they would do pursuant to our agreement.
So let's talk real quick, because we're almost out of time on this one, but risk for the sellers.
Risk for the seller, a buyer coming back and saying, that maybe these weren't fair terms or something like that, or them not doing the documents properly. There's a ton of disclosures that have to go out to everybody, and if you're not sending out those disclosures, or if you're not following the property code to a T, then this could come back around and bite you.
So there's something called due on sale clause. What's that?
Yeah. So the due on sales clause, it's in almost every promissory note, and every promissory note is accompanied by a deed of trust. And it's in the deed of trust, and what it says is that, hey, if you transfer title, basically what it says is that if you transfer title from your name to somebody else's name, it can or may trigger the due on sales clause, and which means that the lender can accelerate the note. They can say, hey, look, whatever the rest of the balance is on the mortgage, it's owed and due. And so, especially with interest rates rising, it's kind of a convenient time for banks to call notes due.
Yep.
And so something that I always tell all of our investors, everybody that's involved, that, hey, look, this is out there. Some investors don't care, because they're like, well, I have a reserve and I have all of these properties, and if one of these notes gets called, I'll pay it off and I'll refi it or something like that. But that's what it is.
Well, and the bank really, they made the loan to person A.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now person B is paying it. That's a little bit, not necessarily square, but I guess as long as, it happens all the time. It does seem a little weird.
I think the banks are in the business of making money. They're not really in the business of trying to figure out, as long as they're getting paid in most scenarios, I think that they're usually good. But that's,
Are banks predatory, do you think?
Here's where the podcast versus the radio comes in. We can get into predatory lending.
Sorry, we just lost audio on Keaton there. All right, Keaton, so if folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can reach out. They can go to our website, www.txsuits.com, or they can call us at 210-503-2800. That's 503-2800.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, next up on the show is Eddie Solis, a realtor with Empire Realty Group, who specializes in working with military members. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. So you've got a military background, yes?
Yes, sir.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So I did 8 years in the Air Force. The main reason why I chose the Air Force is just because it was down the streat from where I lived. Like I could literally hear taps at 9 o'clock, and I would always be like, "What is that noise going on over there? Are they charging or something right now? What's happening?" And it was great to finally like, you know what? Let me take the plunge. Let me join in the military, and I loved it. It was a great way to see the world. I wanted to get out away from San Antonio because at that time I never left Texas, so it was a great way. In the military itself. So I started off doing security forces, which is just a cop in general. And then I had this opportunity to advance my career in something called the Raven program. And the Raven program, we pretty much protect high-end people from the main Mr. President himself, VP, and all the 3-letter agencies along the way. So I literally lived out of a bag for 4 or 5 years. As soon as I landed, I flew all over the world, like on a moment's notice, South Carolina, down to South America, down to Africa, Afghanistan, Germany, which I loved it. The wife didn't love it so much though. She was like, I never get to see you plan a weekend with you. And I was like, hey, unfortunately, it's what happens. But I loved every moment in the military. The military helped me be the person I am. It helped me with my leadership skills to grow, and that carried over tremendously to my personal career now.
So you came out of the military and jumped right into real estate. What made you want to go into real estate specifically?
Great question. So while I was in the military, I saw the opportunity to start investing. So I bought a home, and then in that single home that I had, a small little 1,200 square foot home, I had one of my buddies say, hey man, can I come live with you? And I was like, sure, why not? I'm never home. I only had a 3-bedroom house. So the next thing you know, another person moved in. And then I was like, I'm never home myself anyway. Let me rent out my own home. So I was living literally in the living room. And then I was like, you know what? I'm making all this money. I was like, let me buy another house. And then some of the troops are like, man, I see you, having this extra funds. Like, where do you get this from? And I told him, I was like, well, you go out and as soon as you got the barracks, you move right into a rental. And then you're just giving away money. And by the time you move out to your next place, well, that's it. They give you a handshake and maybe you don't even get your security deposit back. And I told him, look, when I leave here, I have equity in my home. I can either sell it out or I can keep running it to what I'm doing now. And while I was getting out, I ended up helping like 10 other people in my little group that I had. And then I ended up becoming the go-to guy for whenever somebody got the barracks, they'll go talk to me first. Like, hey, go talk to Sergeant Solis before you go buy your rental, before you move out. And it just, that feeling and just knowing that my guys are going to walk away with money when they end up leaving that place. Because so many times I heard the thing like, well, I can't get out the military because I can't afford it. Or I'm scared, I don't know what to do when I get out the military. And that just let me know on a bigger scale, look, I'm helping these people out, in the long term.
There's a lot of trust between the military members as well. So you being, prior military, you've got that connection. You speak the lingo, you know what I mean?
And I never thought that was true because my wife's also a veteran as well. And she got out before me. And she was like, you don't understand the way it is out here. Like, as soon as you meet another vet, like, you instantly become brothers and sisters. And I'm like, eh. And it wasn't until I got out, like, you said it perfect. I can never have seen this person as person, but if I meet them at, like, at a networking event, like, boom, we were just boys, or they're like my sisters along the way. And we just try to help out one another. It's amazing.
So speaking of leadership, you didn't mention that you were red rope back in the day. We were talking the other day, and he mentioned the red rope, and I'm like, I know that term. So if you're ever in the Air Force and gone through like the law enforcement or security forces, you know what he's talking about on the red rope. So that was cool. But leadership is a big thing, and I'm in one of your I'm in B&I group that you head up, and you really helped form it, right? It was you and just a few other people, but you led the charge on that, and it is very well run. If you've ever been to it, it's very well run. The people there are super motivated, and that's not by accident. So you were telling me when you're putting it together, you were looking for a specific type of person or people to be part of that group. So tell me a little bit about that, because I think this is very interesting.
So I went to a B&I just not knowing what it was at all. I showed up and I was like, to be honest, because I'm always blunt and everybody knows me for it, like, I thought it was lame. I thought it was boring. I thought it was wasting my time. People were clapping for each other. I'm like, what kind of cultist thing am I sitting in right now? Because I like to think of it myself as the normal person. I mean, everybody's normal, right? But as long as it just felt weird. And I got asked again to go back, and I was like, okay, I'll never go again. That's what I told myself. I was like, let me go in at this time with a clear mind. And how would I make it mine? So with that mindset, I went in there and I was like, I wouldn't have this person on my team. But then I was like, what people would I have on my team? And I was like, what's going to attract more people to come show up? And those are the people that are hungry, they're motivated, and they want to meet those like-minded people so that way they can grow their business. Too many times you hear people say, I want to be around people like me that have that mindset. So what I did was the first 8 to 10 people, I want to make sure they were hungry. They were hungry go-getters, because that's going to feed other people. When they walk in their room, they start talking to someone like, man, that person's he's just on it. And I love that, because you don't want to walk into a room and you know, everybody's all down and out looking at their watch. Like, I'm ready to get up and get out of here. Like, I got to be here kind of thing. So I made it the first 10, the culture. And once again, back from the military, you got to build that culture from ground up. So I said, from the first 10, they all got to be unique in their own ways, and they can't be all 10 Eddies, you know, because if they're 10 Eddies, you know, they're going to clash heads every time and nobody's going to have room to talk, because he's just going to talk the whole time. So I had to make sure those first 10 were hungry, motivated. And after that, you start seeing other people start buying into it, because those people that were shy, that were timid, they started feeding off those other people. And now they are up in the front, they're talking, they're smiling, shaking hands, when before they joined the group, they were never like that. And I like to think it's the culture being built.
And Eddie, you always call people out in our BNI, and I think to the culture, what is the biggest value that you always talk about every week? I think it's made your networking so successful.
Are you talking about the giver's gain?
I am.
Giver's gain, right on the money, bang, bang. But I love to put people on blast. I love for them to talk, because it gets them out their comfort zone. And especially if you ever are a guest to our BNI, just be prepared, you will be called out. But the giver's gain mentality, I love it. And that, once again, from the military, because I was always a selfish person until I joined the military. And the military really showed that you cannot do it all on your own as much as you think you can. You have to have that team, that solid foundation. And then that made me to a givers. I was just like giving away information, free knowledge to everybody. And then once I came to BNI, that's one of their foundations. They said it's a giver's game mentality, to where you throw it out there and at some point the universe is going to give it back. Don't expect it, just give it out. And sure enough, I had people like, man, you're a great guy. Like, I can't believe you're just giving this away for free. It really is. It's just giving it out, because at some point it's going to come back and you get gratitude. You know, I just love it, the feeling. It sounds fake. I know it does, but until you should go to one of our BNI groups, you're going to see how much a full room of people just bought into that mindset.
Well, and I think one thing that's so unique about that mentality is when people come in and they don't have that mentality, they just want to get stuff from everybody. It kind of naturally weeds them out a little bit, because the core people in the group really truly believe in that giver's gain, that abundance mentality. And that's what we're all here to do. You know, that's a big reason that we're doing this podcast, is everybody's here to share their knowledge and to be able to have a trusted source to come to. That's so important. And when you come at it from that, you can really trust the people we work with. Have you experienced that from actually using the people in the BNI in their businesses? Yeah.
So going back a little bit to what you said, is like, I would bring heavy hitters to the BNI. That when I mean heavy hitters, like, these people were well-known people in the community and what they did. But when they got there, one of the first questions was, okay, when am I going to talk? And when are people gonna listen to me? And I was like, man, to be honest, like, you already had the wrong mindset of just showing up. It's like, just sit back, listen, and pick it up something. And they're like, nah, I don't want to go, because, you know, it's just not for me. And this was back when we first started, back when we could barely fill the room with 6 people. And then they come back and they see that we're 40, 50 plus in a room.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, how do I get in? And I'm like, I don't know. I think that ship sailed.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I think we have somebody.
It's going to cost you an extra. I need an extra 50.
Well, that's the thing too, because I was there from the very get go. I mean, I remember being at just happy hours where we were all just trying to get to know each other and get this thing started. And the first few months were a little bit shaky. We were trying to get our legs, get the rhythm going, get the right group of people. And it was kind of similar to how I felt in college when I showed up and I was like, I'm here for 4 years. And then all of a sudden, like, half of my class left after the first year. And I was like, what? But it was similar, because not everybody was there for the reasons that the group had formed. But those people that stayed, I mean, I know if I use them, if I call on them, if I need their business, they're going to be there and absolutely step up and do a great job.
It's a sorting process that has to happen in everything that you do. And when you get good people in that are motivated to build relationships, at the end of the day, that's what a networking group is it's a place to build relationships with other business, not a place to take. Yeah. So if you think you're there to get referrals, just to your point, you got the wrong mindset already.
Got the wrong mindset. It took me 6 months, and I'm the president, the one talking the most, for someone to really start trusting me and started using me. And I knew that going into it, because I knew, like, I ain't gonna hit the ground running and people are just gonna throw stuff to me left and right. I gotta earn people's trust. people already have, and in any company you're in, they're 1, 2, or 3, 1, 2, 3 realtor. I just want to be your 4th. So let me work my way and build that trust to be your number 1 eventually. And I have people in my group that they never even thought about buying a house, and they haven't told me that they want to buy a house, but they're my biggest advocate because they said, man, this guy's amazing. He's awesome. Trust him. And one person's giving me 2 deals already just because they trust me enough. And she's on the next one, by the way. She knows who she is.
All right, Eddie, we're out of time on this, but a great conversation. I love talking about leadership, and I know that you exude it. I've seen it. You know what I mean? I'm in your group for a reason. I'm not by nature necessarily a follower, but I follow good leadership, and I think you excel there. So great job. If folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Best thing, give me a call. Let's go out for a cup of coffee, especially come out to my BNI group. So 210-683-8292.
Awesome. All right, Heather, any closing thoughts?
I think it's just great. I mean, and really touches on how we're here to really build relationships and give people value. So if you're listening and you're thinking like, I'd love to like build my business through networking, that's the key to it. It takes more time than just cold calling and knocking on doors and going direct to people. But at the end of the day, that business that comes back is way better, way easier, way higher quality than what you get from just working with people cold who don't necessarily trust you. And I think that's something that anybody can walk away and use in whatever industry they're in.
I agree. All right, as we wrap up the show, quick reminder to check out our latest podcast or catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. That's going to be it for us. You guys have a great week, and we will see you on the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Good job, guys.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Love it.
It was great.